What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. There is another disgruntled wide receiver in the NFL looking for a trade. Should the New York Jets be in the mix? Let's talk about it. So it was reported today that Jauan Jennings of the San Francisco 49ers is looking for a new contract. And if he doesn't get that deal with the 49ers, he'll ask for a trade. Now, this, I think, is interesting because, as many will note for the New York Jets, and we'll look at this through the Jets lens, they need help at the wide receiver position. They have Garrett Wilson as their number one. I don't think anyone's going to argue that he's a number one receiver. But beyond that, there's a lot of question marks. Now, I've been someone who's been saying that I think Josh Reynolds is going to essentially be this team's wide receiver too. But that's not me saying that he's a great number wide receiver too, and that like, okay, you have that figured out, you don't have to worry about it. That it's just that of the options the Jets have, I think they're going to be banking on him being closer to what he was in Detroit 2 years ago with Tanner Engstrand, with Aaron Glenn, and then what he was last year. And you have the likes of Alan Lazard and Arian Smith and Malachi Corley and Xavier Gibson. And, there's just a logjam of guys after that who are, unfortunately, fringe roster players. And I think the Jauan Jennings one is at least something that we should talk through. I don't think we should just be either like 1000%, this is a no-brainer for Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. Obviously not that case, but it's also, I'm not going to just brush it off and say, yeah, this isn't even something I'd kick the tires on. I mean, last year for San Francisco, he played really well. 77 catches, 975 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He was second on the team in receptions and receiving yards. So Brandon Ayuk, who got a big-time contract extension a year ago, got hurt after 7 games. So unfortunately for them, that's a big loss. But you had Jauan Jennings take over as essentially the number one guy, and Debo wasn't very good, but George Kittle led the way. Their tight end was their leading, receiver. And then it was Jauan Jennings, but they also drafted Ricky Pearsall early in the draft a year ago. And he was hurt at the beginning of the year, he was recovering from being shot, but ended up coming in. So I don't know if the 49ers are going to be so quick to go, yeah, you know what, we'll give you a contract. We're also paying Brandon Ayuk, and we have this former high-end draft pick that, we're going to be okay with keeping as the number 3 guy. I think, there's a very strong chance that they can go, all right, well, you don't want to pay Jauan Jennings, so we're going to ride with Brandon Ayuk coming back and having, Ricky Pearsall in a bigger role. But when you look at Jauan Jennings, his cap hit for this year is just $4.26 million. Now, after the 2023 season, so before his 900-yard receiving season, he got a 2-year deal at $11.89 million. And then he had that breakout season, and he wants the security. And I get that as a, first, someone who advocates for the players. I understand it from his side because he's going, well, I'm not really making all that much money this year. And, this is someone who's, I believe, a 7th round pick. So it's not like he, had some significant cash on his first deal and then, got a nice second deal. He's undervalued for sure at just $4.26 million. And he's a versatile wide receiver. I mean, he can play in the slot. He can play outside. He has some size. He played at 58.4% of his snaps came as an outside receiver. In years prior, he was utilized more in the slot, but I don't know how Tanner Engstrand's going to do things, but how the Jets' last offense ran, they like to move Garrett Wilson around. And, for all of his flaws, Alan Lazard could move inside and outside. Josh Reynolds, kind of the same thing. And then Jauan Jennings, you could even make that case too. He's a good blocker. His drop rate was good, just 4.9% last year. So reliable hands. And I don't think this is going to be some lofty kind of extension that you would likely see. Like, you're probably looking at 11 to 13 million on a 3-year extension. And that's pretty much the going rate for most wide receiver twos. It's a very similar contract to what, Joshua Palmer signed with the Buffalo Bills. You could put it like Darnell Mooney kind of in that tier, somewhere in that range. Now, I get the pushback that people are going to say with, well, why not just trade for the better wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, who's also looking for a contract? And while, believe me, I'm not saying Jauan Jennings is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is a stud. The guy's going to get a really big contract, but you're not going to be able to pay Garrett Wilson and Terry McLaurin essentially $30 million a year. Both of them are going to be in that $30 million range. So Jauan Jennings at, half of that cost, it still allows you to, pay Garrett the money and pay Sauce Gardner what you're looking to pay him. And, maybe that impacts what you do on the offensive line. Like if you sign Jauan Jennings, are you able to then also keep both AVT and John Simpson after this year? Maybe not. So maybe you're making the case, I think something that you have to decide is, would you rather retain both guards in John Simpson and Elijah Vera Tucker, or would you rather choose one and the wide receiver too? And that's really what it comes down to. Like, I think you can make a case for either one. And if you're, let's do it. Team, trade for Jauan Jennings, and I'll get into compensation in a minute here, and just pick one of the guards. Okay, I see that. Or if you go, you know what, I'd rather just keep the offensive line, keep the continuity there, and look to fill wide receiver 2 in the draft or free agency or whatever else, then okay. Like I also understand that. So honestly, I don't think he's gonna really cost a whole lot draft pick wise. Like, you're talking about a day 3 pick more than likely. That's what wide receivers who need new contracts get traded for. We saw DK Metcalf get, I think, like a 2nd round pick. George Pickens, that contract or that trade return wasn't, amazing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, it's hell, good example. Brandon Marshall, the Jets acquired him for a 5th. We see these trades where, wide receivers who, who they are, and the name recognition, they're still productive, get moved for mid-round picks. So I don't know, 4th, 5th round pick, something like that, going to, the San Francisco 49ers. And then the Jets have potentially their wide receiver 2 for the next 3 or 4 years. So he's entering his age 28 season this year. I definitely like this idea better, even with you're going to have to give up a day 3 pick than signing like an Amari Cooper or a Keenan Allen. That's a Band-Aid, and a really old Band-Aid at best. Like when you go in the pool for a few days in a row and like the Band-Aid is like hanging on by an absolute thread. That's what signing Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen would be. Like, yeah, maybe you're going to the store and buying, the name brand and not the CVS brand, Band-Aid, but that one's going to last you a little bit longer. And that's kind of what you're doing with Jauan Jennings, in one, the contract that he would get, but also giving up the trade compensation. So it's also, if they were to do something like this, I think it's something that helps your offense not only this year, but beyond, right? Like, we don't know what Justin Fields is going to do this year. I'd like for him to be this team's long-term answer, but there's a very real chance that they might be looking for a quarterback. And, it'd be nice for a young quarterback to come in, whether, again, it's Justin Fields or a rookie next year or whatever else, and you go, okay, I feel pretty good. You have Mason Taylor, who had a nice rookie season, and you have a number 1 in Garrett Wilson, and Jauan Jennings had another productive year for us as well, and was somewhere around, 600 to 800 receiving yards. And maybe that's just because they're not a really pass happy offense, but I feel a lot more comfortable with a guy like that than I do with Allen Lazard, obviously. And I know I've been beating the drum that it's going to be wide receiver 2 season for Josh Reynolds, but I would trust Jauan Jennings more than I would trust Josh Reynolds too. And, I get it. There's, the people who are going to say, well, play the young guys, and, Malachi Corley and Arian Smith. And okay, Arian Smith, I think the staff will be wanting to get a look at. He's likely just a deep threat this year. I think he needs a little bit more time to develop his game. I've said it before, but I don't know if it's a lock that Malachi Corley makes this team. I really don't. I don't love the idea of just, having to move on from a 3rd round pick a year ago. But again, this isn't the regime that drafted him, and they don't have a lot of tape on him, at the NFL level. And he's been hurt this offseason. He has an uphill battle to make this team. So just something to think about. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe here if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.